All right, so welcome to the data team meeting for Natchez ISD, Natchez Junior High Elementary. So Ms. Hudson, Ms. Rod, Mr. Underwood, thank you for being here. We're going to look at this synectic activity to kind of break the ice. This picture here, you have a guy, looks like he's a little bit overwhelmed by paperwork. But I want you to look at the picture and us discuss a little bit of what that might make you feel like or think about when you see that picture in relation to data and in dealing with data. I know you ladies and gentlemen have dealt with data quite a bit.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes I hate to say it, but I think we're too many things that we deal with are too data driven. You know, and it takes a lot away from things sometimes, but it is good. I'm not, you know, I think it's good to have, but you do get overwhelmed really fast, and it's consuming. It's very consuming sometimes.
It's drowning.
Yes.
You do drown.
Yes.
At points.
Yes, but with our accountability system like it is, you have to be data driven to get what you're looking for.
Right.
You know, and to get to meet that goal, because you have to have some form of statistics and data to know what your strengths and weaknesses are.
And what direction you need to go.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay.
It occurs to me that data, the term data, may be a trigger word for faculty stress, similar to test is a trigger word for stress.
Student stress.
Students.
Amen to that.
Okay, so, you know, a little bit of a background. You three have all worked in administrative capacities and with data and in professional learning communities. And so this process that we're learning about today, you might be familiar with and you might not. You might have worked with data before and in similar methodologies as this, or you have worked in this, what we talk about, they describe as collaborative data inquiry. And so if you'll take out the handout H1.1, this is a handout that explains the specific type of data process that we're wanting to use in relation to the identified student problem at Natchez Elementary Junior High. So if you'll just take a few minutes and read over this, I'm going to give you some highlighters. If there's some things that kind of stand out to you and you'll highlight, we might just discuss that. Yes, ma'am. here in just a minute, we'll move from this part of the activity, and then we'll go to the next part, which is you're looking at the notes and the handout, and you highlighted some things that were maybe key components or things that caught your eye. I have here a PowerPoint slide that kind of explains the data process collaborative inquiry that we will be doing. So if you'll just take a minute to view this for me, and then we'll talk about the handout that you just got through reading. So, using data, task 1. So this meeting will just be about identifying this particular method of data team work, and we might look at some of our goals as a data team for this particular student problem. So we start here with the foundation, and we'll do some data research. I've done some preliminary data research. I looked at the taper, the CIP, and some formative testing, but mostly it was from the taper. And then I did identify a student learning problem. I had narrowed it down to 3 student learning problems, met with Ms. Snyder, and we narrowed it down to 1, which is specifically 8th grade social studies, 2017-2018 negative growth rates. So we can do some more data research to kind of, well, we'll see how I did as far as my research is concerned, and then do more data research to kind of drill down into the TEKs that are more specific to what could be possibly be a reason for a student learning problem. Like you and I talked about informally, and you as well, Ms. Ryan, some of these reporting 1 category TEKs. And then so we want to verify by looking at the causes, and more data research, generate some solutions, which will probably be in the form of a SMART goal, 1, 2, and 3, usually 3 SMART goals, but maybe just 1. And then more data research. Now, when this is made into a recommendation, and if it is authorized to be an initiative, then we can actually implement these, whatever we deem to be the solutions, and see if they work by looking at student performance for next testing cycle. All right. The data divide. So, effective data practice. What effective data practices have we been using here in NACHS? I think we do use data practice quite a bit here at the junior high. I know that we have access to DMAC. Okay. And I just want to know that, I just want to say that I am also interested in looking at how I can get some of information from DMAC. At my earlier school, we used, I think it might have been Edu4U, and they had this thing called an IFD, which is an instructional focus document. And this is a little off the subject, but now that I'm thinking about it, I have you guys here. Oh, hang on. Is it time? Well, let's just move forward. I'll talk to you more about that later, ma'am, if I think you'll know about it. Thank you. So, significant improvement in student learning and closing achievement gaps is a moral responsibility and a real possibility in a relatively short amount of time, 2 to 5 years. Now, can anybody read that
What do you want to say?
inversion chart there? What is that saying, do you think?
That,
That
I would
things,
say that, the poverty rate and, the ethnicity of the students and things like that has a factor on, how they do.
how the achievement they do.
Yes, ma'am. And so my preliminary data, it seems like it could be a cultural proficiency issue as far as economic.
Disadvantage.
And what they're exposed to, like different things that they might have, some people may not know, about some of the history or, you know what I'm saying? When I say what they're exposed to and things like that.
Yes.
So you have some, students that may not be, as exposed as other students.
Yes, right, like maybe being read to
Mm-hmm.
by parents at an early
Yes.
age.
Yeah.
Yes. And-
Traveling.
Yes, traveling,
Outside of
exactly.
Natchez, Anderson County.
Exactly.
They have very limited exposure.
Yeah,
Non-
that, I would say that.
Non-structured or non-formalized
Yes.
education.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
So-
that's true for our kids, because if you'll also look, on our breakdown, we don't have enough in the different ethnicity populations to have a sub-pop. So
Right.
ours is mainly economically disadvantaged and special ed. And our economically disadvantaged kids do score normally at a lower rate than our non-economically disadvantaged. And we have almost 50%
Mhm.
ED kids, so
Yeah.
they're, that's free and reduced lunch, and that is a factor. I mean, like
It
you said,
is.
they're low socioeconomic, they don't get to travel, they don't get to go many places. I mean, Palestine's
read.
about, and they don't read, and they're not
Yeah.
read too, and it's not important.
Exactly,
It's survival skills is what's important to them, so when they get home, school's done,
yeah.
and it's survival of the fittest. You get
Like
to eat,
Maslow's.
that's right, that's exactly, what'd you say?
Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the necessities, not the, it's what they
Yeah.
gotta have to live.
Yes, ma'am. And so we're probably gonna be talking more about that in future meetings. So, yes, ma'am. Okay, and then let me get back to the slide that we were on. So that subpopulation group of economically disadvantages and possibly African American and or Mexican American students might be something we want to talk about in regards to cultural proficiency and equity. Then there's this bar graph. Canton City Middle Schools improved mathematics over 3 years. And so this is just kind of a testament as far as citing sources and through research, the possible effectiveness of data research, and specifically the type of collaborative inquiry data research that we're going to be doing for this data team's meetings. Here's another chart, bar chart, that shows achievement scores in Ohio. And the idea is the numbers speak for themselves. I hear this a lot, that the statistics don't lie. So you have test scores that have gone up.
And this is examples of schools that have used this data-driven process?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. But we're seeing, I guess when I'm looking at this, what I'm seeing, if y'all are seeing this too, is the subpopulation groups performing lower. And so that should be addressed, like y'all were saying. So y'all are aware of that, and that might be something that we need to.
Well, but your variations in the subgroups is gonna exist, always.
Always.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've never, ever seen
Yeah.
that subgroups are uniform. But the significant thing there, of course, is that all
Increase.
subgroups did show improvement
Okay.
That's right.
on a percentage
Okay.
scale.
And, I mean, in the next couple of years, you're fixing to see a lot of Hispanics coming over with zero English, and that's fixing to really affect that sub-pop tremendously. Because those kids are gonna be dispersed out in these Texas schools somewhere, and then they have no English background. They have zero English. A lot of our Hispanic kids that come, they can speak a little bit of English. These kids have zero.
Yeah.
So they're strictly, they're non-fluent, and that's gonna start affecting that
It is.
fast.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's gonna change in a lot of places.
Well, if I'm not getting too far afield, again, going back to talking about the success based on, people especially training with data teams, et cetera. I had some experience in San Antonio with students who came to class, high school, who came to class, no English. And yet, I was responsible for their
Yeah,
advancement. And we figured it out, but I had no training in that
yeah.
area.
I think that's gonna be, something we're gonna have to look into. Not necessarily our school, but a lot of schools, they get some training, but, like I said, most of the students, they have a limited English speaking. These are gonna be
But
non-English
we do
speaking.
have some of those kids.
Yeah, we
Because-
do.
Because there's a distinction between conversational language
And,
and
yes,
academic language.
that's exactly right.
And that's where we leave a lot of the subgroups behind.
And I can attest to that. I mean, when I'm lecturing, I see that now. I see that, like, the way I frame sentences. Okay, some students are gonna understand what I'm saying because they're hearing it in the classroom or they're reading a lot. And so that's the things that, this is great. These are things that we need to be talking about more in these upcoming meetings, when we're looking for SMART goals to.
And I also think, I mean, I'm not degrading anyone, but I will say that a lot of our kids have non-educated parents.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're not used conversations like my grandkids get, or your kids get, or your kids would get, you know what I mean? I mean, they're used to, and there's a difference there. I mean, there's definitely a difference in vocabulary, and vocabulary is huge in history.
Yes,
Huge.
yes.
And so if you're not familiar with that word, you know, it's just, it's huge. I mean, so much, and I think that that's, we're gonna see a lot of that.
It's the
Because economic
vocabulary.
disadvantage goes along with
Yeah.
that.
It's
Yeah.
the vocabulary used in homes.
That's right, yes.
We
it
even
is.
had, one of the, preparing for the seventh grade start recently. We were looking, and we went back, and we did a little sample, and just 7 questions,
Mhm.
and we looked at the data of one question, 95% of the kids missed it. Why? We figured out they didn't know the word byproduct.
Byproduct? Yeah, see, I mean,
7th grade didn't know that word. Now, we would assume, you know, if you're a traditional or stereotypical middle-class person, would assume that a 7th grade kid would know the word byproduct.
yeah,
But you can't know what you don't know.
right. Well, and also on, the English, revising and editing part, you know, that's a lot of subject verb agreement. Well, in East Texas, we talk totally different than they do in
Yeah.
upper.
So are we
You
teaching
know, that's
registers of
right.
language?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, all of us
Yeah.
talk differently than
Right.
anybody up in Central Texas or in the Panhandle or with, I mean, our slang is totally different.
Sure.
And, you know, and now I really get in my mind, because when I'm talking to my little ones, my grandkids, and I'm thinking, they're repeating what I say. And so I try to correct them, and we're working on subject, I mean, like past tense right now, just with them at home, and they still don't get it. And I'm like, well, you know what, because that's learned, yeah, that's learned.
Yeah.
They don't know
That's
that.
it.
They don't know that past tense is ED, and they don't know that
Yeah.
will is future tense, and,
Yeah.
you know, and,
And
so.
even as simple as, and again, this came up in the 7th grade writing, understanding first person, second person,
Yes,
voice,
yes.
third person. And they
Absolutely.
switch back and forth
Uh-huh.
during one paragraph.
During they
It's like,
do.
well, what's wrong with that? Well,
Sometimes I
So,
find myself doing
all
that.
of
Yeah,
this
yeah.
goes back to
Yes.
how do we prepare the faculty to be aware of those things? And that
It's
covers a
cool.
lot of material.
Can you restart it?
It's full.
Oh, your data's
Yeah,
full?
it's full.
Okay, I don't know if I'm
But
rolling
yours
or
is
not.
still going.
It is rolling?
Yours is going.
You know, when I
Okay,
did my
thank you,
student,
ma'am.
another example, when I did my student teaching those many years ago, I and the high school principal were the only men on campus at wartime.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for watching that, Ms. Rodney. I appreciate it. Well, guys, we need to move on because this type of conversation is like what we need to do, like these next couple meetings. This is awesome. I'm learning from you guys. There's some core values here at this type of process. Significant improvement. We looked at the slide a minute ago, but I think that I rushed through it a little bit, so I wanted to go back to this core value slide. Significant improvement in student learning and closing achievement gaps is a moral responsibility and a real possibility in a relatively short amount of time, 2 to 5 years. So I guess you guys know that we're wanting to close achievement gaps, even though it's not just about that. And specifically, we were talking about subpopulation groups, cultural proficiency, and equity issues. Another core value, kind of the main idea here with understanding this type of process, this data process, is the collaborative element of it, which is what we were just doing, talking. And because with some of my SMART goals that I already did for us to look at, I haven't really addressed the subpopulation element of it. So that's why this is good, because even though I've looked at the data, your eyes looking at the data will be, you can see things that I don't, or the experiences you already have in this field that I don't have. Collaborative inquiry, school teams constructing meaning of student learning problems, and testing out solutions together through rigorous use of data and reflective dialogue unleashes the resourcefulness of educators to continuously improve instruction and student learning. So I think that's what we were just doing a second ago when we were discussing that you guys were reflecting and talking about the data. So we're on the right track. So we have some academic sites, some academic peoples listed here that say that collaboration is key. And that the inference is that in order to bridge that divide, collaboration, inquiry is a good way to do that. So that's the basic idea. If you don't mind looking at your handout, and let's just discussing a little bit of what you guys highlighted, starting with you, Ms. Hudson.
Well, I just highlighted, I went over the 5 steps of the data process, using the data process, and so I would, in my mind, know exactly what we're looking at, which, the table pretty much tells that. That's really all I highlighted. I've read it, several times, because I read it last time too, this same handout.
Yes, ma'am.
But that's really all I've highlighted, are just some basic 5 steps, and so I'll have in my mind what we're gonna do.
And those basic 5 steps were the key concepts.
Yes, like number 1 was building the foundation,
Yes, ma'am.
identifying the student learning problem, verifying causes, generating solutions, and implementing, monitoring, and achieving results.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ms. Ryden?
What I get out of it is when you say, is the bridge, between the data and the results is the collaboration. And I picked out a couple of things. It says ongoing investigation of data, with the goal of improving teaching and learning. And the process where teachers and administrators work together. So that's all that collaboration that you're gonna have when you are looking at students' achievements and seeing where they're at and what needs to be worked on. It's gonna have to be that conversation between the administration, the teachers, and even the parents, to get that student that may be at a lower level to their grade level. So I looked at all of those things and monitoring the students' learning. So that all comes into what we were talking about. We get that data, and then we collaborate all together, and in the end, we try to get the results that we are looking for. So all those things that were in here is what I highlighted, the necessary steps to improve results for students.
Yes, ma'am. Also, before I get your input, Mr. Underwood, there also is another element where we can adjust. So there's that ability to adjust if we get results, and we can always adjust the continuous action plan. So that might be something we talk about more later. And then Mr. Underwood, do you have anything you want to say about that?
Well, I'm kind of devil's advocate. I've been through some of this stuff enough at a number of different levels and campuses, grade levels and campuses. I'm always looking, well, what's the fly in the ointment? Why is this not done more? And of course, first thing is time. Time is always an issue. Teachers are always pressed for time. Faculty, administrators are always pressed for time. And collaboration is great, and most teachers would like to do that. But how do we make that happen without asking them to stay after school and come in early and do extra? So from an administrative level, we have to find ways to make this workable for the faculty. And there are ways to do that, of course, but it's a significant consideration from the administrative level.
That's why a lot of your schools now are going to these flex days, like Palestine starts flex days this week. On Fridays, they let their kids out early, and then they have meetings like this. And they take advantage of those. And I think that's something that we need to work on at this district, is that, I don't know if we utilize our staff development days
Yeah.
like we should. You know, we need more like on the in-service, and that's in my mind for next year, because there's a lot of stuff coming up the chain that we're gonna be responsible for, that all teachers need to know about, even though it's not on their plate, they need to know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's gonna be a collaborative group effort if we're gonna achieve at that goal, so.
Yes, ma'am. And I was gonna say, just some of my colleagues and cohorts that I speak to, a lot of them work in those bigger school districts.
Yes.
And I think they're using a lot of these things, because a lot of
Yeah,
the ladies and guys, they have already done this stuff and been a part of these professional learning.
But you have to think, we're a small community,
that's
a
right.
small school, and, I know at, one campus, they, bring in, the aides into the classroom, and the teachers go out for data day. So like, they have a data day set to go over, like major tests and things like that, to look at what they need to change, or adjust, as you were saying. So, like you're saying, it's, you know, it probably is where we need to be when we have, staff development and in-service days.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just another thought on that, from the very start. You know, when you say, oh, we got a new program, well, the immediate reaction for a lot of us is, oh, God.
Yeah,
another
Right, that's exactly right.
So you have to be ready to sell it
Yeah,
right from the very first.
Yes, yes, sir.
And, you know, again, going into this collaborative and especially trained and rigorous use of data, that sounds to teachers like, oh God, I got more work, more responsibility, more paper.
yeah.
So we have to, from the very beginning, say, let me show you how this is gonna work, and it's not gonna be an extra burden, and that sort of thing.
Have a plan beforehand, that's
Yeah.
right.
And
What-
they researched it really well
Mhm.
to bring out the important parts, or important points, that you want them to know about, that you feel is gonna work the best for it.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys. We're pretty close to the end of this meeting, I believe, because the main purpose of this meeting, and we might have to span it to the next meeting, was to be introduced to this process, look at the importance of the collaborative process, the key concepts which we have done, but then we need to move into the part where we talk about roles and responsibilities of the data team members and norms, because we will get excited and passionate about talking about this. We have to have a system in place to where, you know, like, we're getting the information down, because like, this is interesting, because I just saw it happen, like you guys were like talking, and like a lot of stuff, good stuff was coming out, right? So the ability to capture that, I believe, is that the way to say it, and get it systemized so that we do something with that knowledge that's coming out, because that was kind of interesting to see you guys talking about it. To be honest, you know, I'm learning through this process, and so just a little bit of y'all talking about it, I learned a lot, but the ability to systematically get this information and do something with it. And then I think that's the main part of this first meeting. And then when we finish we'll call it a task, because it looks like task 1 is going to span 2 meetings. For the next meeting, we'll just look at the rules and regulations and the norms. And then for the third meeting, we'll go to task 2, which is actually looking at the data, and I'll have the data ready for you. So I think this is a good point, because we're about to get, the bell's about to ring, and we're going to go to the next period.